Excellent. So Bryce and I just had a bonding moment. We share a very similar story. And so I have you for the next 20 minutes or so. I know I'm the only thing standing between you and the party upstairs. So my goal is to keep you as entertained as possible. So I am here to talk to you about advancing technology, how that's a transformative force. And as part of that, I'm going to share my own personal transformation and journey with you as well. So I don't know if any of you saw the picture on the website here, but I'm an avid mountain climber, and I've had a lot of people ask me, what mountain is that? So I promise if you bear with me for the next 20 minutes, I will tell you. So you'll find out toward the end of the presentation here. So as part of my journey here, and being an avid mountain climber, if you know, does anybody know any mountain climbers? High altitude mountain climbers? A few, maybe some of you are mountain climbers. We always have lists of all the peaks we want to bag. So one of my lists is the 7 summits, and those are the highest peaks on each of the 7 continents. So I finished one of them, Kilimanjaro, which is over 19,000 feet. Thank you very much. And feeling pretty good. So the next year I did Aconcagua. That's in Argentina, and that one is almost 23,000 feet. So best shape of my life, feeling fantastic, ready to conquer Denali, which actually just went back to its original name. It was formerly Mount McKinley. And that one's over 20,000 feet in Alaska. It's a good climb for people to prepare for Everest. So, you know, I'm well on my way to getting all 7 summits done. Much like Bryce, however, I was kind of stopped in my tracks. And in 2013, during a routine checkup with my doctor, was diagnosed with cancer. So, pretty shocking. And I don't know if you know anybody who has been diagnosed. I'm sure you do. Maybe some of you have actually been diagnosed yourself. But I went through major denial. Couldn't possibly be me because I was the healthiest person that I knew. So after several biopsies, I finally decided to opt for surgery because it was beginning to spread. And then the question becomes, what do you do next, right? So a lot of people don't have time to do this, but what I did is I kind of created my own personal health care, personalized medicine. And type A personality, which you can probably imagine with most mountain climbers, right? I went out and I read every kind of research I could get my hands on. I interviewed doctors, I interviewed people with similar cancer, and basically came up with my own healthcare plan, right? And as we'll talk a little bit more, I mean, doctors don't have time to do this. Everybody's cancer is different. The standard procedure, standard health care puts everybody down exactly the same path, right? It's not individualized whatsoever. Now, a lot of people don't have time to do that, to basically come up with their own health care plan. But that is the promise of personalized medicine. And one of the great things about working for a technology company like IBM, and kudos to Bryce and Intel as well, we're not going to solve this individually. It's something that we have to do together, right? In the industry, it takes a village, not just an individual. So we are headed that way. I know Bryce talked a lot about genomic sequencing, which is a huge part of this. The cost of genomic sequencing has gone down dramatically, right? Billions of dollars and years and years of research have driven the cost down to be able to do this for $1,000 now, you know, versus the billion. And we can now do this even from preconception all the way until, I guess, womb to tomb, right? And follow somebody and understand what their DNA looks like, how it's changing, right? We can start to look for patterns, what it might look like within your family. And that is really important data that can help us get to the point of having this personalized medicine. So not only that, right, the genomic sequencing is really important, but there's also another piece to this, right? It's the translational research. So how do you take the person's information about the genomes, right? How do you combine that with blood tests, with scans, with other information that a physician might be capturing, and take all that data and put it together so that you understand what's going on with the individual and you can actually treat it at that level. So there are huge possibilities here to take that personalized medicine and make it available to people, masses of people, as opposed to just one person who may or may not be able to sit there and do, their own research and come up with their own plan. Okay, so this is actually happening. Thank goodness. This is beginning to happen. I think we're seeing, the start of this technology really taking off. So we've been working with Bumrungrad International Hospital. And it's interesting, we've started with a hospital that's not, not in the United States here, but they are working with folks from Memorial Sloan Kettering. Now, what this hospital does, they have over 1 million patients, okay? And over half of those patients actually come from 190 different countries, right? So all different kinds of cases, all different kinds of information, and they maybe don't have the technology or access to research that other countries do. So we've paired them with Memorial Sloan Kettering, and their doctors can actually help consult or share knowledge that will help some of those individual patients. So they're able to analyze data not only from these doctors themselves, but in addition to that, thousands of hours of training, thousands of hours of clinical trials, and be able to take that information and come up with personal diagnosis or personalized health care for their patients. So why is this important? Well, these oncologists, on average, an oncologist will see 2,300 patients. That's a lot. My oncologist, fantastic surgeon, but as I mentioned, you get down a path and they don't have the time, they don't have the information at their fingertips to be able to treat each of their patients individually and to understand what the best treatment for that person is. So what this enables us to do is to scale basically what I did for myself and be able to make this available to other people, other patients, to give them the kind of personalized health care they need to actually overcome whatever their disease is. As Bryce said, it's cancer. It could be something else in the future as well. So what we've also heard a lot about today is data, right? So we have data coming from everywhere. I don't think that's any big surprise. Obviously, the data coming from genomics is generating the largest amount of data. Now you take this and you couple it with information from clinical studies, from patient records, and once you start to bring that together, then it becomes an increasingly big data challenge, right? How do you bring it all together? How do you get meaningful insights from it that can actually help somebody, again, personalize their health care? So this is where I think, and I didn't mention this, but I actually have a software background. So as I've spent time in the software industry, I really never thought what kind of hardware you put these solutions on really matters until I started working in the hardware side of the industry. And these are huge. They're data problems. They're compute problems, trying to crunch all the data to get the meaningful insights. The genomic data we know is exploding, right? But now you need to be able to take that, you need to combine it with the other types of data I mentioned, the patient records, right? All of that unstructured data, and then use that to create meaningful trends, meaningful results, and as Bryce was talking about earlier, making that available to other people, that research, so that we can advance the technology together, right, as a village and not as an individual. So one of the things that we've done at IBM and working with Scale Matrix on this is, as well, is we've created IBM the Open Power Foundation, and we have designed our company to be open by design, right? Building everything on OpenStack. And what we've also done is opened up what was previously proprietary architecture, because one of the things we realized is that we can't advance it alone as fast as we would like. So we opened it up to our Open Power Foundation partners to help build on that technology and to bring that to customers, right? To bring that to the industry and to help bring these technologies to the world as well, so we can personalize medicine as well as do other things for them as, in addition. So some of our partners are here, and I know they've got spaces up here, so please go and visit them. One of the examples I wanted to give to you about this Open Power, putting it to work and how we're using this to transform the infrastructure, is we've created something called a turbo LAMP stack. LAMP is Linux, it's Apache, it's PHP, it's MySQL, and over 50% of e-commerce, web, and mobile applications run on top of this stack. So I wanted to share this with you because it's something that we're in partnership with Scale Matrix on. And it's also something, getting back to when we start to bring these different technologies together, what we can actually do, with many versus just one. So what this helps us do is optimize hardware, software, end-to-end stack, okay, for e-commerce, for example. So working with Magento. So how does this tie back to genomics? How does it tie back to part of my story? This is, bigger than just personalized healthcare, right? It's looking at it end to end. So what we can do with this, right, is, and some of the results that we're seeing, is when you optimize working with partners, network, storage, the whole infrastructure and the application on top of that, we've actually been able to decrease our transaction costs per client or per customer by 65%. And we can also serve more than 6 times the number of customers. What this does is it lowers the costs of doing business, right? And that's investment that companies can take, and they can transfer that lower cost for their customers who need these life-saving health products. What it also does is it helps drive investment into innovation, right? So I can tell you, after designing my own personalized healthcare program, this is something that I take advantage of. I work with a team of doctors around the world who have prescribed various different products that I order right off the web, and I use these products on a regular basis. We work with a company, a national health foods provider, and what they've done is they've actually, their cost savings, taken that invested that in innovation, so that they can now work with physicians. They can get design a specific program working with that physician and make that available to people who have had health challenges like I've had. So as I mentioned before, this is something that we're working with Scale Matrix on. And Scale Matrix actually has the platform available here in their data center. We have a number of other projects here in the pipeline working with Scale Matrix, and one of those is around genomics and other high-performance computing type applications as well. So we're very proud to be here and be working with you. Thank you. So I think I might have gotten turned off. There we go. Okay, so our journey will continue with Scale Matrix. Obviously, within IBM, we'll continue our journey of advancing this technology forward. And I have actually continued my journey as well. So I was sharing with Bryce earlier, so August was the 2-year marker, which is a pretty big milestone. I got my last scan, and I am clean. So thank you. Yeah. So big sighs of relief when you go and get those scans, and it's a little nerve-wracking when you actually have to go and get them. So I did opt for the surgery in August, and it was a long recovery, right? So I started with some slow hikes in Colorado, just an hour, maybe 2 hours, which was a huge, huge milestone. Wasn't sure if I was ever going to be able to do that again. And kind of built up from there. So each of those hikes was a really, really big deal. And I continued my journey to the 7 summits. So last year, I did a peak, the highest peak in Australia. It's only 7,500 feet from sea level, but that was a big start, again, toward getting to all 7 summits. I did a few peaks in between, continuing the 7 summits journey. So in December of last year, I went to Mexico and climbed the highest peak there. So inching up, kind of seeing what my body would actually do at altitude. I went to 18,000 feet. And then I finally knocked out another of the 7 summits this past July, which is what the picture was on the front of, of my presentation here. Thank you. So I actually felt fantastic. It's the first time that I've felt that good in a couple years, which is why the next target is Denali. So going back and trying to knock that one out 3 years later, so a little bit off course, but that one's scheduled for 2017. Mount Vincent is the next one in Antarctica, and then I've got the big one, which is still several years away, but hopefully on target there. So at any rate, I think for all of us working with Scale Matrix, IBM and my own personal journey, it's all really connected, right? And what other technology companies like Intel are doing, like I said before, we're not going to be able to do this just with one organization or one individual. It really has to be all of us working together to advance this technology. So let me just end on, I wanted to end with this quote, which is from our CEO, Chairman of the Board, Ginny Rometty. And this was in our 2014 annual report. But this I think, sums up where we're headed as an organization in partnership with many of our partners here like Mellanox, Zend, MariaDB, and others. But IBM lives at the intersection of technology and business. This enables us to change the way the world works, and in doing so, be essential to our clients. And I think while it's important to be essential to our clients, I think the bigger piece here is being essential to society. So thank you very much.